Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Celtic State of Mind. That is the lunchtime bulletin. I'm Colin Watt and I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host today, Amy Canavan. Amy, how are you doing?
I'm alright, Colin. How are you? You've got a fancy new mic today, haven't you?
A bit of investment in the mic. Heard a couple of people saying that the audio was a bit off, so let's see how this goes. We're going to get into some of the talking points that have come up over the last 24 hours at Celtic, including what we see here in the main headline, which has been put out: don't drag Celtic into this weekend's shameful scenes. So we'll be discussing that. We'll also be discussing the Celtic Trust's statement that came out with their proposal for the shares. And also just want to take this opportunity to put out a message just in memory of Tommy Gemmell. It is 4 years to the day since Tommy Gemmell's funeral. And it's a sad loss to the Celtic fan base, the Celtic family. Looking back on it, it was 4 years ago now. It seems as if that time's absolutely flew by. And these Lisbon Lions, there's not many of them left. We've got to make the most of them whilst they're still alive.
Yeah, absolutely. You love seeing them back at Celtic Park. You really do. I remember it. I remember being at school at the time, actually, and there was me and, funnily enough, even at a Catholic school, there wasn't that many Celtic fans through here. So it was, there was just a few of us, and I generally remember the morning, and it was sad. So, yeah, you're spot on. Like you say, it's great to see any Lisbon Lion back at Celtic Park, and hopefully when we're all back, they'll just be back as well.
Fantastic player, scoring in 2 European finals. What a man, and a sad loss to the Celtic family. So 4 years on from the day of his funeral, it's a rest in peace to Tommy Gemmell. And also, before we get going, I just wanted to give you a big congratulations for the interviews that you have carried out this week. Mark Wilson on Sunday on the Soccer Supernova, and then also you were joined by Laura and by Natasha for International Women's Day. How did that go?
Yeah, it was really good. I think we all had a little bit of, I don't want to speak for the girls, but I think there was a little bit of trepidation going into it. But, 99% was fantastic and the response was great. And we had a great time. I think the hour really flew in. I think you see the difference already being back with 3 people instead of 2. I'm like, I get sick of my own voice. But no, it was, like you say, it just probably fell on the worst possible day, worst possible Monday for us to jump on. But, we dealt with it well and the comments were great. So, no, do you know what, though? It just shouldn't just need to be on International Women's Day. The 3 of us should be able to jump on any panel any day. And it shouldn't need to be made a big deal. I think Natasha highlighted it yesterday as well. There's no need for the comments who looks the best, who looks the worst, who speaks the best, who speaks the worst. At the end of the day, we should all just be able to jump on, if it be with you, if it be with Laura, Natasha, if it be with Paul. It doesn't matter. You and I will disagree, and me and Laura will disagree. It really doesn't matter. So,
and just bringing up one of the comments here, there's a lot of people coming in saying that he did very well and it was a great show. And just Bernadette coming in saying Monday's show was great. The women are a big part of a Celtic State of Mind. That they are, and as you said, it doesn't just take International Women's Day. You girls have been part of these shows now for months and months, and it's always been a thing here at Celtic State of Mind to get as much involvement, not just from males and females, but from people from all kind of walks of life. And we're absolutely delighted to have you as part of the show. And Monday's show, yeah, you're right, the timing probably wasn't the best considering what happened. But it was an important thing, and it was important that you got the chance to do it. And I'm sure it's something that we'll see going forward, is not just on International Women's Day, but for many times going forward to come. So, absolutely. Moving on to the big talking point that has been on social media, and it is not the Harry and Meghan interview, it is the tweet that came out from Celtic last night. And it was quite an interesting tweet, because there wasn't a lot of context to it at first. When you saw the tweet at first, what was your first opinions?
So I think maybe like most, I thought we'd maybe been hacked. I really did. I was sort of like, oh, this can't be true. I think somebody fired it into the group chat, which is not just a Celtic group chat, ones I've got with the uni boys, and I was like, oh, very good. This is one of them having a laugh. It was like, I think a few weeks ago, remember the Steve Clark tweet was sent out, and it was a parody account. I was like, oh, of course it is. It's one of those. And then you sort of look at it, and then I think everyone's got that little bit of, about time. It's good that we've got a bit of a statement going, and that is a brilliant tweet. But it's quite comedic for Celtic, and you're like, my God, we're used to wishing a player who's played 5 times during the noughties a happy birthday. So it's a bit odd to actually be making like a statement like this. And then you sort of just take a step back and go, it's a bit a little too late. I think there's a lot of emotions going around now. And it's just one of those ones that I really am like, why? So why is it only took for this to now cause a statement like this? What about for the last, since 2012? Why is it took until now? So I think it's a little bit of an odd one, if I'm honest, but I guess it's injected a little bit of oomph probably that the club's been lacking, and hey, it's not a happy birthday post, so we really can't complain.
And to be honest, it's the only post that Celtic have made in the last 24 hours, despite the fact I believe it's Chris Sutton's birthday today. They've not even wished him a happy birthday. So I wonder if they will wish him a happy birthday. But yeah, the question kind of, when I seen it at first, I'm like, what is this about?
A clue.
I didn't have a clue. I generally didn't have a clue. But then I wasn't aware of what the context of it was.
Again,
it wasn't until later on.
There. Unless you really knew Park's statement, and like if you've been working all day, or you just actually don't look at that side of matters. And as well, like it wasn't like not a lot of outlets had actually highlighted it. I think there was just certain newspapers that we probably don't really read. And that's how that's the only reason that I made the connection as well. But you sent me a message going, sorry, what's going on? So
I generally didn't know at first, but then for anyone that hasn't seen it, the context of this comes from the letter that was sent from Douglas Park to the First Minister regarding the kind of instance that we've seen on Saturday and Sunday. And it is one particular line that seems to have kind of annoyed the hierarchy at Celtic, and it says, due to the behaviour of the other half of the old firm outside Parkhead in December. So for anyone that hasn't clicked yet, that's exactly what Celtic were referencing in the tweet, which put out basically saying, Celtic Football Club statement, we're not half of anything, with the kind of eyes rolling emoji. Not our problem. Hashtag one club since 1888. Now, this one club since 1888 is actually something that Celtic have actively promoted in the past. This wasn't just something that came out because of today or yesterday even. It's been out since, I think it's 2018 the first time they started talking about that, and I took a look up at it, and basically the idea was it was used as a marketing video to sell the season tickets in 2018, 2019, about the whole one club since 1888 thing. But yeah, for me, it's a positive step, but it kind of goes against everything that I've seen from the board this season. What did it take for them to like come out and say something? It's as if they get wound up, they've had enough, and that's it. They come back at them now. It's petty between both teams, right? It's petty that Rangers can't say Celtic, and this whole kind of one club thing. It's not a professional statement, right? You've got to say that. I expect Celtic to follow up on it. I think they have to follow up on it. Otherwise, it's just a sort of like a tit-a-tat between the two teams. And there's a lot of people coming in with some good comments. It's like Douglas Park sent this letter to the First Minister. Celtic still use Park's coaches, and I think they take, according to Celtic anyway, 6 coaches up to Ross County. So they're still funding one of his businesses, whilst coming out and saying, well, call us Celtic, or we're not part of the old firm. I don't really get that side of things. Surely if Celtic don't want any association with him, then they should start looking for another bus company as well.
Absolutely, and sorry, I am tied back on it on Monday. oh, we're talking about guard honour on Monday. That's what the tweet. It gives that vibe that it's like, don't lower yourself to their standards, because you mentioned there. So it's that tit for tat. Celtic, Rangers, can't say Celtic, and in Celtic obviously retaliate the way that they do, and it's that whole like, don't sink to their standards. And I understand the tweet is appeasing fans, of course it is, but again though, I think you've got, once the initial sort of shock and maybe jubilance that tweet's been sent out, you've got to take that step back and go, well, why is it now? So you can communicate with us, but you still can't communicate with fans. You still can't communicate, like even the whole thing with Lennon, like, yeah, obviously that chapter is done, but the whole communication up until that process, the whole communication now still looking for the coach, it's the lack of communication is still there, and it has still been prevalent all season. So why is it now, on the back of the statement yesterday, that now a tweet comes out? And that's the communication. So, yeah, fantastic. That's a great tweet. But where's been the rest of the communication this season?
Yeah, and then if you take a look at it, to me, it's not an official statement. You see it posted on Twitter, you see it posted on Facebook, but there's nothing on the club's website. This was a simple reaction. Get people talking about it. Try and get some good grace with fans that they've really had trouble communicating with this season. If you take a look at Celtic's social media over the whole season, until Neil Lennon was mutually released from his contract, it just used to be pictures of Neil Lennon with a red cross through it, basically to remove him, and there was ones with Jerry McCulloch and Ryan Christie and loads of different ones. This is the first one you've seen quite a positive response back to, and it's almost a kind of, let's try and get the fans back on side.
Season tickets.
Well, that's the big alarm bell. How far away is the season tickets? We did say it's going to take a massive PR campaign to try and convince a lot of fans that have been really turned away from the club this season. Do you think that is the first step?
You'd think so. Like you say, the timing of this, what else is there? Because these, they've said stuff all season, and even the whole weekend, Celtic could have came out and said something on Friday, they could have came out and said something on Saturday. This is before the league's even done. Obviously, someday I understand keeping a little bit quiet, but again, if you're going through that, though, you look at all of this, there's 55. All they've plastered is 55 everywhere. If you want to then go off this sort of mantra and say we're not part of anything because ultimately that is gone and that is dead, then call out the 55. 0 + 1 doesn't make 55. So if you want to, if you're going to continue down that stream, you've got to sort of jump into it with 2 feet. And if not, then like I say, it's just it looks like it is trying to appease fans in my eyes.
Yeah, and just the point you're sort of making there, the 0 + 1's 55. That is going on the Rangers liquidation storyline, yeah. And that kind of takes us on to the next part of this, and it's the response that we've seen from certain people, saying basically, well, Celtic have renewed the trademark for the term Old Firm. Yeah. So what does Celtic genuinely believe? Now, everybody's got their own opinions on whether Rangers are still the same club, whether they've bought the history, whether they're a new club, whether they're, and you see it in the comments all the time, they're Sevco, they're this, they're that, they're the next thing, right? It doesn't take kind of any sort of, like, you don't have to not say the word Rangers. They are Rangers, right? Whatever form they're in, whatever you want to believe that they're in, the team is called Rangers, right? And we're called Celtic. So when you're saying the statements, this other half of the Old Firm or this team from the other side of Glasgow, just name them. It's a lot easier to say Celtic and Rangers. People know what you're talking about. But when it comes down to the Old Firm trademark thing, Celtic said, and I think it was the kind of last Glasgow derby around about the time that Rangers were in administration, going through into liquidation, that was the last ever Old Firm game. Now, that was something that they promoted, that was within the programme that day. It was part of the campaign that they put out when they were advertising the kind of clips of the game. This was the last ever Old Firm. And since Rangers have been in the Premier League, it's never been referred to as an Old Firm. It's always been referred to as a Glasgow derby. So when you take a look at it and you see the fact that they're now trademarking, and only just done it, I believe it was the other day, the trademark, the term Old Firm. It's a commercial thing from Celtic. It's all about making money. If someone's going to make money off the fact that people will still call the Celtic and Rangers derby the Old Firm. Celtic want to make the money off it. Whether Celtic call it the Old Firm or not, other places will. You see it on Sky. Sky mention it all the time. It's the Old Firm derby. So if they're going to make money off of it, Celtic's going to want to make money off it as well. They just don't have to refer to it as that. They can have their own beliefs but still continue to make the money.
It's just like you say, it's just a little bit tit for tat, it really is. And it is just like, just don't lower yourselves, as you say. Just we all have our own opinions and we all have our own views. We all know what happened in 2012, we really do. And there's no point. We're nearly 10 years on from this. There is really no point in keep going back. Nobody's not now going to start just calling it Glasgow Derby or start calling them the Rangers or whatever in God's name they are. But we all deep down know what happened. But for now, like you say, that the pettiness I think has to go, because, like you say, you just got to call them Rangers and I just got to call us Celtic.
Mm-hmm. It's so much easier to do that. The whole kind of dancing round a word, like people know them as that. Just call them that. It doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. It's just the easier thing to say. But yeah, what do you expect to be the follow-up from this? Do you think Celtic will come out with a follow-up statement, or is this the last we'll hear of this matter?
I am definitely still waiting for the sorry we have been hacked. I don't know. I really don't. For Chris Sutton's sake, I really do hope that he gets a birthday tweet. I really do. And then that'll, I think that'll probably be the end of it. I don't actually see anything continuing. I think they were maybe looking for a bit of a bite from Rangers, and I don't think that they got that, unless maybe they did. But it's just one of those. I just think it was like, right, that's a wee kick. We're still here, we're still listening, and like you say, get the fans on side. But it'll be interesting in the coming weeks. I think it'll be interesting as well, depending on if the game goes ahead. There'll be a lot going up to that. But I think a statement will reflect matters taken out of our hands. So if Sturgeon says something else or the Park says something else, and I think it'll just be whoever's the admin that day on social media, if there's a response or not. Because like I say, I think the fact that so many of us were sort of under that impression that we've been hacked just shows you how surprising this is and how un-Celtic this is, that a little bit of fight has been shown and a little bit of acknowledgement of the fans' attitude and just sort of like, right, the fans are there. Like, it just sort of seems a bit odd that they are actually reflecting probably what the majority of fans feel and see. So I don't know, what do you think?
I'd be surprised to see a follow-up statement on this. It does feel as if it's just a throwaway comment. We know there's so many people on social media. We're going to try and get them back on side. We know the way it's been this season. We do have season tickets coming out soon. And do you know what? That's fine. If that's the tactic they want to do, that's fine. It will split the opinion base. There'll be a lot of people that says, well, that's not anywhere near enough. We want you to follow up on it. You've seen it. There's always a heavy support behind the idea of publishing the 5-way agreement, publishing things about Resolution 12, and you see the people that actively support that, and you'll get Celtic fans that also don't support as heavily the publication of these things. They just want to concentrate on matters on the park, and you get it. It's a bit of a... It depends on what your beliefs are on that, and it will split the fan base. So for me, I don't think there'll be a follow-up to this. The only thing that I think would bring up a follow-up to it is if the game on the 20th, is it the 21st? Yeah, the 21st.
21st, yeah.
Yeah, if that game doesn't go ahead. If that game doesn't go ahead, then I assume there will be a follow-up to that, because at this point, has Celtic done anything in the last couple of weeks, couple of months to deserve not to be playing that game? I don't know what you think on that.
No, like you see, it's going to totally be down to what happens on the 21st, if the game goes ahead or not. I think there was a few things last night that, the game's in doubt and this next and whatever, but like you say, I think it's going to be the determining factor. I think the worst thing is that there's actually that long a break for Celtic until the game. Obviously Rangers are in Europe, but there's just that long wait. It's pretty agonising, and just like you say, it'll be interesting if anything is said, but I don't see anything happening, because as you say, you mentioned that they kept quiet on Resolution 12.
It doesn't. It's not a typical Celtic thing to do. This statement isn't something that we normally do. But yeah, honestly, if the game doesn't go ahead on the 21st, I genuinely expect a statement to be made, and I expect some sort of action to be taken by the board. I don't know what your thoughts are, but for me, if the game doesn't go ahead, I don't think there's anything that can suggest that it's Celtic's fault for the game not to go ahead. I would be expecting us to claim the points. I would be looking for us to take the points for that game.
You'd like to think so. Like you say, there's nothing immediately, like we all know the Dubai fiasco, but we paid the price for that. We really did. So there's nothing that Celtic have done recently that shows that it's anyone at the club's fault if the game doesn't go ahead. Like, that's just a matter of fact. I think as well now, is there something maybe happening with their COVID-5? Are they actually maybe getting looked into now?
Genuinely couldn't tell you.
I'm sure I maybe seen something about that last night. But funny, obviously, that Tavernier's out and the boy Patterson manages to play, and now now it's getting looked into. But there we go. It's by the by. There's been a catalogue of mistakes from them in recent times, from Rangers in recent times, and there has been. So it will be interesting to see what happens if the game goes ahead. But as you say, then the points will be taken. But at this point, that doesn't really matter, does it? Us to get the point. It's like, obviously, it's a statement. As you say, it's making the statement that we're right, they're in the wrong. But it's just, you just want a game of football, to be honest, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to the football, and taking a look back at Sunday's game, obviously you gave your comments on Monday on the show. Honestly, for me, I found it quite an entertaining watch for the first sort of 60, 65, maybe even 70 minutes. A lot of chances, a lot of different play. Were kind of moving at a much faster speed. Everyone was wanting to get on the ball. We're creating chances. The problem was the chances that we're creating were either from distance or they were straight at the goalkeeper. And then as the game sort of got towards the last third, probably, you just knew that Celtic's fitness was starting to come into it. They weren't creating the same amount of chances. The substitutions that were brought on didn't really do anything to sort of spark any sort of energy back into the team. And it just kind of felt from probably about the 75th minute onwards as like, this game's just going to a draw, that's it. It's almost like a kind of end of season game from that point on. Just going back to what was your thoughts watching the game? At what point did you realise that we just weren't going to pick up the 3 points?
I think pretty early on in the second half, if I'm honest. It was just, to be honest, like you're mentioning all those chances. What was it? Was it 26, something like that? But you look
26, 27.
They're from 25 yards out, and I don't know what you actually determine as a chance. And you look as well, the keeper made good save, but he didn't really make a save that you wouldn't expect him to make. Mm-hmm. Like, either he was called upon, absolutely, but was there really one that you go, right, he's really done well there? Not really. No. I mean, he's a goalkeeper in the Premiership. He has to be of a decent standard, and he done his job. There was nothing really that Celtic looked like this is now going to happen. There was a few chances, headers. I thought that was actually one thing. We were actually all right in the air the other day, which is quite surprising. I don't think that we're very strongly there at all, even when you look at the height in our squad, with Ayer and Welsh. And I thought maybe they had the best chances. Elyounoussi as well had a few, but none really looked like that little clinical edge, and that sort of like gut instinct that he thought he could score. I think it's just like what happens back down to the attitude. You look at the attitude as well. It's all about run about. But you look at Kennedy's attitude when making substitutions. The substitutions yet again did not make sense. It was carbon copy Neil Lennon. Like, we'll bring on Lee Griffiths so we've got a league title to try and save. We've got 9 in a row, going for 10 in a row to try and save him. Bring on Lee. I don't care if Lee Griffiths isn't 75% fit, or if he's only had however many minutes and however many games. He's still Lee Griffiths, and he is still a striker, and he is still a proven goal scorer. Get him on the park. He is better on the park than sitting on the bench, and you bring him on with 5 minutes to go and you expect him to inject a little bit of magic. Like, give the boy a chance. So you just, like I say, you just look at Kennedy's attitude, and I just think a lot of it is a carbon copy of Lennon. And probably that's maybe when, I know I said the start of the second half, maybe that's when I thought it was done, the first substitution. You're thinking, nah, he's not actually really that fussed for it, and neither are the rest of them.
Mm-hmm. I thought watching it, there was players that were really trying hard. I mean, Elyounoussi couldn't have had any more shots on target or shots off target. He was really giving it a go. the substitutions, you're probably right. The fact that we still only use 3 substitutions when you can use 5 for a start, and there's strikers sitting on the bench, it was almost as if we were reluctant to change the formation. We were kind of going with this, and this is the way we were going to go. The substitutions that came on as well, taking Turnbull off after 60 minutes, I don't know. I thought he wasn't having a great game, but you still know that he can have that sort of creative spark that will set up a chance. And the substitution, I think it was him for Rogic, that took the pace out of the midfield. I don't think Rogic's quite up to speed in comparing him to David Turnbull. But it was just an interesting game to watch, but as it got towards the end, it just got harder and harder because you just knew that the game was kind of petering out to a 0-0 draw, and I think if they were still playing, they probably wouldn't have scored the way we were up front on Sunday. But now you've got a sort of 2-week break before you go in to play the game against Rangers. Was there anyone that started that game that you think is definitely in line for a start? Is it next Saturday, next Sunday, whatever day it is?
Sunday. I honestly don't have a clue. Just going back, there's a lot of comments coming in that Griffiths is this, Griffiths is that. At the end of the day, you can say what you want, but maybe I'm probably a little bit naive and I'm still too much in his camp, but I do just think everything that he's done over the past however many years he's been here, it's 2013, 14 he signed, something like that. You can say he's a wage thief that's coming in and all that, but he is a striker, right? Go back, now you'll remember better than me, Colin, when the Invincible run was coming in and end against Hearts. What did they get beat by Hearts? 4-0, something like that. 4-0, right? See, what were we, 2-0, 3-0 down, and Brendan Rodgers he stuffed the system, and there was about 4 strikers on the pitch at that time, if I'm right. Like, honestly, forget the system, like you're saying, chuck everything at it, chuck everything in the kitchen towel at this, and that's why I'm saying bring on Griffiths. Just show, and I'm not even really talking about Griffiths, I'm talking about Kennedy in that sense. Just chuck everything at it. Make it look like that you really are caring and that you really are trying to defend this 10, defend any sort of dignity until the last second. Like I say, you go back to that, and Rodgers, he had about 4 strikers on, and I don't even know if there was probably, I can't even remember what sort of system you're looking at there, if there was maybe one midfielder and it was Scott Brown or something like that. The system doesn't matter, you just chuck everything at it, because at that point it was just, the attitude was not there, it was non-existent. And I touched on it Monday. This is the biggest thing was, and I'll ask you about this as well, afterwards there was not enough hurt for me. They're not bowing down to their knees, and I think maybe Laura highlighted it and she's spot on. Ayer was the only one who looked slightly like he looked devastated. He's the only one who showed the slightest bit of emotion. The rest of them, they weren't falling to their knees. Now, maybe they had accepted that the league was done, and that is absolutely fine. But don't act like it is. Maybe deep inside you've decided that the league's done, but don't show to the fans that really you threw the kitchen sink in it whenever, in January after Dubai, after the Rangers game. Show until the last minute that you at least look a little bit fussed. And the attitude, yet again, for the whole game on Sunday, I would say was the issue.
I think when you look at it at different points this season, that attitude's been there. That attitude of just giving up. I kind of go back to maybe performances against Ross County, against St Mirren. It's as if they were stuck in first gear. They really couldn't get out of it, and it became desperation at times. You take a look at some shots, like maybe the game against St Mirren, Ryan Christie fired one over from about 30 yards and it was almost getting into the top tier. It's performances like that is a complete frustration, I think, from the players of how the seasons went. But I think they gave up on this a couple of weeks ago. Dundee United there at the weekend was just, that's it, confirmed. I think they knew weeks and weeks ago, and you've seen it in the performances since, that it's just been a case of, like, let's get through to the end of the season. The players that are going to move on, they're already thinking of their next move. The ones that are trying to win a contract are kind of weighing it up whether it's worth staying at the club for another year. For me, Sunday was the end of the era. That's it, it's done. And the rebuild should start as soon as possible from now. There's a lot to rebuild. There's not just a squad there. You've got to rebuild a management team. You've got to rebuild the trust from the supporters as well, from the way that you've treated them this year. I think if you take a look at the way that the fans were at the start of the season, the optimism going into the season, and then just the complete kind of lack of response from the club all season. It's soured fans' thoughts. You look at things like the virtual season ticket, and fans are paying £600, £700 for a season ticket to get a service which is of lesser quality than what fans overseas can subscribe to for about £150 a year. And we're going to touch on that in a minute about the added value. But there's been such a disconnect between the club and the fans this season, and with the season ticket renewals probably coming out within the next few weeks, things like that statement yesterday, things like getting a proper management team in place for next season, that has to be a priority. And I'm expecting the club to at least do something before the Rangers game to try and get the fans back on side, whether that be an appointment of a director of football, a sporting director, or even a manager. Whether it be that he doesn't come in until the summer, or if he's just appointed for that game, now is the time to try and get back in the good grace of the Celtic fans.
Absolutely, like you say, it has to happen now. What's the point of waiting until the summer? There's also no need to wait until the summer. Like you say, the manager can be appointed and he doesn't come in until the 1st of July or whatever it may be, but the announcement can be made and the appointment can be made. Something needs to happen, like you say, to get fans back on side, and what's better time than now? There's no need to wait. There really isn't.
And I think they were speaking about it on yesterday's bulletin, the idea about John Collins perhaps coming back into the kind of structure at Celtic. What's your thoughts on that?
It's an odd one, isn't it?
The passing, the moving, the tempo, not fancy that coming back in.
Can you imagine? I've always been a little bit dubious about the whole director of football thing. Anyway, I think maybe now is the time. You're looking at it's not a director of football, is it? Football, a director that Darren Fletcher's just been appointed at Man United. Maybe that's something. It's something a little bit different. The wording's definitely not director of football. I think it's football director. But you're looking at something like Fletcher who reads the game so well and who read the game so well as a player. That's the sort of guy that Celtic need, and I don't think John Collins is that man. I think right now he maybe needs to just stay away a little bit from Celtic. What he done for the club as a player, absolutely, but I think there's still a little bit of eeriness with some fans after everything with Dylan. There was just a little bit of an odd sense of what Collins has said in the past, and I just don't really think that he's the right guy. I don't know about you, but I certainly don't.
No, I think that is not the kind of direction you want to be taking the club in. Someone that's been there before, some of the people just coming in saying that he's been appointed as a technical director at Man United. There's always that thing about people when they leave a club. It's like bringing them back the second time round, it's just not as good. You don't get the same out of them. Now, a couple of people can maybe say that's not the case. You take a look at Fraser Forster. He's been there 4 times now at Celtic, and every time he's just as good as what he was before. His last period at Celtic was probably the best that he's had at the club. But for me, John Collins, was he a great footballer? Yes, he was at Celtic. Was he a great assistant coach alongside Ronnie Dyler? I think that's up for debate. I think he annoyed quite a few people behind the scenes and also players at the time as well, and I don't think that helped Ronnie Dyler's scenario. What else would he be doing right now? You don't see him kind of walking into any sort of job. There's jobs available. The Aberdeen job's there. Should someone like John Collins not be kind of in the running for the Aberdeen job? If he's not even in the running for the Aberdeen job, why would he be put up for the director of football at Celtic? I think it's a complete non-starter. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on it, because obviously we spoke about it yesterday and we went on, but for me, I don't think he's worth even considering for this role. I think he's just trying to put his name out there.
Like you say, if he had the capabilities and had the CV and the right attitude to become a director of football at Celtic, then he probably would have been swiped up long before now by any other club. Like you say, there's the Aberdeen job, there was the Dundee United job in the summer. There's been a few decent jobs kicking about, especially up here, that he could have went for Ross County not too long ago. So like you say, he's more a pundit now, it seems. And if that's the case, then that's the case. So, like you say, I think it is a non-starter, and you want to look at somebody a little bit younger, a little bit fresher, who sees the game moving forward. Maybe not somebody who played in the 90s, and like you say, maybe it just doesn't have the football brain of football now. Because it is a different game, and you'd like to see that forward-thinking approach. And I don't know, maybe the director of football has to be somebody from further afield and not so Celtic connected, and who brings brighter ideas, and maybe is just a little bit quiet behind the scenes. It'd be quite nice to maybe have somebody in who you don't really know, just who does all the work behind the scenes, and it's sort of like just that face that you see. And sometimes it's the best thing. The quietness is a good thing.
You take a look at it as well. There's also a few names that have been discussed on here before, and also been discussed by fans on social media. Guys like David Webb, who previously worked with Eddie Howe. Now he's actually been given interviews with the Glasgow Times, the Evening Times, whatever it's now called, and their reporter Mark Hendry, kind of speaking about the time that he's worked with Howe before, some of the things that he's brought in. Do you think when guys like this are talking to the media, and we've seen it before with guys like Mark Hughes has been on this podcast alongside Mark Bowen, David Webb's been interviewed by the papers, does that mean they're basically not in the running? Because surely if you were really in the running for the job, would you really be discussing that with the media right now?
I don't know, it's an odd one. Everyone sort of deals with it differently. It's quite a big question. I'm trying to think of maybe somebody that done so, spoke to the media and then got the job. But I think it's changing times, isn't it? I don't think you can really read into it too much. Maybe some feel that they need to, if they put themselves out there, and you can sort of read the response to an interview or to a podcast or to speaking to a newspaper, then you can sort of see how are the fans from said club respecting it and receiving it. So I don't know, it's all sort of mind games, it really is. And I guess if you maybe he's not really that known in the system up here, he'd hold a wee interview maybe with the Evening Times, see what the perception's like, and then you can sort of decide. It might give him that edge. Do the fans really want me? Do the fans not want me? But it's a tough one, it really is.
And again, it just goes back to the point we're saying that you just want Celtic to start being a bit more proactive. You want to start seeing actual links with names. You want to see that, oh well, this person's coming in for an interview. You want to see this player's been seen coming into Scotland, something like that. Like, you just want to start planning for the future as soon as possible, and you've got to think that the club were looking at the succession planning going forward, that they knew Neil Lennon was never going to be there permanently. They knew they had to start planning for the next manager coming in. And now you've got, so I think it's like another 10 days now between this and the game on the 21st, and then there's like 3 or 4 weeks before the next league game. I know you've got the Scottish Cup in there, but there's like 3 or 4 weeks before the next league game. That is a lot of time that Celtic can go and start actually making these plans for the future. In that period, I would be very, very surprised if the season ticket renewal forms didn't come out. So could that coincide with the fact that this is the time now to appoint the new manager and the new director of football, or whatever route they're going down? And do you genuinely think that we will see that before the first game after the split?
What question? Do I genuinely? No, I don't. I don't, like say, I don't say that. I don't see the proactiveness. I really don't. I don't know what you think, but it's just sleeping behind the wheel, and I don't see it happening. As much as I'd love to be proven wrong, I really, really would, but I just don't. There's just dead air. I really think so.
And then that goes back to something that we were also speaking about earlier, was the relationship with the fans, and this question over added value. And that segues over to another topic that we were discussing yesterday that we've actually been able to take a bit of a deeper look into over the last 24 hours, and that is the Celtic Trust's statement that came out yesterday. Basically what they were saying is they have proposing to the Celtic board that they should be issuing fans shares as a way of additional value for next season. Now, there's been a bit of discussion over whether that is additional value or that is in the form of a refund. And you've seen also within that statement that they've come out and said that some hospitality ticket holders were offered a refund, a cash refund, already this season. Now, if you're going to offer a refund to some fans, others are going to want that option to be available to them as well. You've seen what happened last year when the refund offer was put out there. Not every fan took it. Some wanted to reinvest it back in the club. And that is the idea behind what the Celtic Trust are saying, is that if they issue shares to fans instead of giving them a refund, there's no money coming out from the club. It gives fans a greater say in how the club is being run, and it would be up to the fans as to what to do with their shares. Now, obviously, the Celtic Trust are pushing to get themselves involved within the club more. I think the idea for them is really to eventually get a place within the board at Celtic, so that they can have a great say in how the club's been run. You see that with the connection with Celtic Shared as well, someone else that's been on a Celtic State of Mind. But if you take a look at it, Amy, do you really think that fans would go for this proposal to be offered shares as either an additional value or as a refund on what they've got back for their season ticket money this year?
I don't think you can take a generalised comment there. It is going to be each individual will sort of deal with it differently, and you have some who are just still so dedicated to the club and will put any money in or whatever, and some won't. I think it is, like you say, it's one that I don't think's going to go away anytime soon. But yeah, it's an iffy situation, I feel.
And if you take a look at the comments that's coming in, and thank you to everyone who is commenting, we are live on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Jimbo2167 comes in here saying, David Lowe's Celtic Trust, no thanks. But then if I just scroll down a wee bit more, Terry Cassidy's in here saying it's shares in place of a refund, it's a no-brainer for the board. Now that just kind of shows you, just taking a look at two comments there, how split some of the fans would be on that. Personally, I don't think I would have any interest in taking shares in place of whether it be additional value or a refund for this season. I think for me, it's going to come down to personal opinion on people. Some people will want their money back for this year. Now, Celtic changed the terms and conditions of the season ticket sale this year to say that basically no refunds would be offered, which was a change to the previous year, which is why you were entitled to the refund. Looking at the statement from the Celtic Trust, a lot of it comes down to this question over added value. Now, in terms of added value this season, what have you really had as a season ticket holder? You've had a couple of games early on in the European competitions that you saw on Celtic TV. You've had this virtual season ticket which has allowed you to watch the games, and to be honest, the quality of it, I mean, we're still, we're 30 games into the season and some people couldn't even log in to the Aberdeen game. It was off for 15 minutes. You still see it every single week that people can't get logged in. So the quality they've had from that has been extremely poor. There's a digital match programme every week, which I'm sure quite a few people on here have probably never even accessed. So what has been the additional value this season? Do you think offering fans shares is additional value, or is it a refund?
Is that additional value? It is a tough one. It really is. You look at it and go, like, say, what have you had? Or you sort of flip the question, what would you prefer instead? Do you think that the way forward needs to be like a discount on next season tickets? For you, what would you prefer as getting that additional value, that added value? What do you see? What do you want?
For me, I would see it as a discount for next season. You take a look at some of the other clubs across the league, teams like Motherwell, who have offered their fans back the same amount of games that they missed this season. So obviously they're not going to get into the grounds between now and the end of the season, which means they're going to be offered basically the full season ticket next year for the price of what they paid this year. And obviously they probably don't have the same outgoing expenses. In fact, they don't have the same outgoing expenses, and there's no probably about it, as what Celtic has. And Celtic will want to invest heavily this season to try and get the title back off of Rangers. So you can see why fans want to put the money back into the club. But you're not telling me that every fan that was offered the refund isn't then going to most likely go and spend that again on Celtic, whether it be putting it towards their season ticket for next year, whether it's going to be putting it towards the new strips that are going to come out in the summer, new merchandise, any sort of offer that's there. If you can get the fans back on side, they're going to spend that money that you give them. So if you give them a refund, like I took the refund last year, I think it came in at about £100, but that went towards my season ticket for this year. I'm putting the money back into the club. I think fans would do that. I think fans, if they were offered a discount, whether it be, 20% or whatever it is, they'll use that money that they've saved and they'll probably go and buy an additional bit of merchandise. They'll go and buy something else. To me, I think offering them shares, how many people that's actually within the fan base care about the shares at Celtic Football Club, have any involvement of doing any sort of shareholding before? So what do you do when you get your shares? Here's an account, you're logged on to ComputerShare or wherever it is that you've got the shares registered against, and Amy Canavan, you have 5 shares in Celtic. You're not going to do anything at all with that. So what value does that offer to you if you were offered 5 shares, for example? I don't know how many they're planning to offer, what it would be, but I don't see the value in that. I think for me, the Celtic Trust want you to give them the shares so that they can increase their shareholding. And that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, like you see, what are you going to do with the shares sitting there? As well, how much are they really worth nowadays? It's not, back even 20, 30 years ago, again, you're looking before like the economic crash, shares were worth something. Shares, and if you had enough, like you really could have something in that. But nowadays, it's not. They're so little. They're worth so little as well. It's like you say, the discount, and then that's the better approach. As you say, you get that money back, and then really though, that sort of money probably would be going back in the club. As you say, you're going to buy like another top, or you buy the away strip or something like that. But it's an odd one, it really is.
I don't see it. And then you've got a lot of season ticket holders that are under the age of 18 as well. Yeah. Now, by law, they're not entitled to hold any shareholding. So what happens then? Is that then passed on to, say, perhaps their guardians, their parents or whatever? What interest would they have in getting shares in the club? Our supporters club, our local supporters club, invested in the share portfolio thing when Fergus was looking to raise the money for the club. They've got no interest in ever selling that. That's an emotional attachment for them. They bought those shares because Celtic were in the time of need, and that was an emotional investment that they put in the club. Right now, some fans will see it as an emotional attachment to the club to help them get back this league title, to start this next period of domination. But for a lot of fans, I don't think that they're that interested in having any shares in the club. Yeah,
you're totally right. You're like, I'm just nodding away. I'm totally agreeing with you. I really am.
I'm just looking at some of the comments coming in here, and there's one coming in from Phil17HG Smith. I have 151 shares and they're worth just over £200. Shares are not the way to appease fans. I've got to agree with that. I don't see what the value is here. What I'd be interested in seeing, though, is getting someone like David Lowe or Jeanette Finlay or anyone who's involved in the Celtic Trust to come out and actually elaborate on what their plans are for that. What do they want for the fans that are getting shares? Would they rather that they invested them within the Celtic Trust to increase the fan shareholding within the club, or would they support them and help them to perhaps get their money back for them shares? Because at the end of the day, they're getting a bit of paper to say that they own a percentage of the club, and a lot of fans will not have a clue what to do with that.
Yeah, like you say, you really are spot on, and it's one of these ones that I don't think is going to go away anytime soon, but it's certainly not the most pleasing topic to be talking about right now, is it?
No, I mean, you just want to go back to be talking about the football, but it's this period that we've got them, that we've not got any football, you see a lot of stuff happening off the pitch. If you go back to stuff that's happening on the pitch, it's probably just as depressing, isn't it? I mean, the league's been gone. Potentially the Scottish Cup's there to play for. I know Jim Orr just he hates the fact that the Scottish Cup's potentially coming back. He wants the season over and done with as soon as possible. But it's such a strange period within Celtic's history right now. You know the rebuild is coming. You know that there's going to be this sort of new era at Celtic, but we're just in this period of purgatory right now where no one really knows what's happening, and they just want something to talk about. And that's why we have at the minute over 1,000 people watching us. They want to know what's happening at Celtic. They want to hear these discussions. So I mean, looking at the comment section, there's clearly fans of other clubs that are watching as well, but that's up to them. I'm sure maybe some of them's got other things to discuss, maybe some of them have other things to celebrate, but they choose to watch us instead. That's quite a telling sign, isn't it, Amy?
Yeah, it certainly is. Like you say, I certainly don't have time to be watching other clubs' podcasts and that, so good luck to them. Definitely.
Now, taking a look forward then to the game a week on Sunday, we spoke earlier about some of the players that could potentially be playing. A name that was in the papers today that actually it gave me a bit of a fright seeing that he's potentially back in the squad for next Sunday is Nir Bitton. Nir Bitton has announced that he's trying to get himself fit for the game. Is there any chance that Nir Bitton gets involved in that squad for the next Celtic Rangers game?
Where's that one came from? It's that sort of came out of the blue. Not seen that name in a wee while. It's fair play to him. What a bold thing to come out and say as well. Didn't really see it coming. If he is, then I don't know. Is this him trying to get some game time, looking to try and get away in the summer? That's the only sort of way that I can see it. If he's, I can't see him starting under any circumstances.
Nope.
Again, I was going to say I probably can't see him making any sort of contribution. Well, with Kennedy subs, I don't know, but I certainly can't see him starting it. Well, I certainly like to hope he doesn't.
When you take a look at it, I think after the performance in the last game against Rangers, a lot of fans didn't want to see Nir Bitton back in a Celtic jersey again. And I think quite a few of them are looking for him to move on in the summer. Now, I always get ribbed for this because we did a podcast about 12, 18 months ago when we took a look at the team of 8 in a row, and I actually included Nir Bitton within that because he had been because he was consistent throughout that period, and he was always someone that you could turn to. But his regression over that last 18 months has been shocking, absolutely shocking. And I still see a lot of people saying, well, he is a defender now. He's played in the defender's position for that vast amount of time. But for me, I still think he's a midfielder. And I don't want to try and fit a midfielder into the centre-half position. If there's anybody that I want to see making a comeback and being fit for that game against Rangers in about 10 days' time, it's James Forrest. And that was exciting to see him coming off the bench on Sunday, wasn't it?
It was. Maybe that's your trig to light, and the one positive that's coming out of this week is seeing James Forrest back. Again, though, it's just so crucial that he's not rushed. I really feel for him. I really hope somewhere that he can get into that Scotland squad, because that's one guy that really does deserve it. He's had a lot of flack, especially in the national side. But he really turned up with those, it was like 5 goals in 2 games or 3 games or something like that. Went on that wee run, and he was at the absolute peak, and he was at his peak before this. And I don't think James Forrest is. I think it's alarming actually how little he's been spoken about this season, in the sense that we all sort of talk about, what's the difference between last season and this season? A lot of it is Forrest. It just goes to show how big a player that is, and my God, he takes some amount of flack and some amount of criticism. But it's been clear that we've missed him. We've looked at the wings and we're constantly going, we're missing Mikey Johnson, and Ellie Nusi's not cutting it. We're playing Ryan Christie out of position. Well, there's one guy that we do keep missing, and it is James Forrest. So it was great to see him back. It was, but like I said, the next thing is now just to not rush him. I don't know if the Rangers game's a bit big to be chucking him right back into settling from the start. I probably wouldn't, but he's probably one guy who's buzzing that there's however many days, 10 days or whatever until the game, and he's got that little bit of time to maybe prove to Kennedy. But right now, I would just say it's just all about being precautious and just taking time, really, not rushing it, because that is one guy that we are absolutely desperate to get back.
It was quite interesting to see the formation change at the weekend, back to that sort of 4-2-3-1, with sort of Elyounoussi playing on the left, Christie sort of played on the right, and I think you'd have to go back to that formation if you're going to try and get someone like James Forrest back in the team. He's not going to fit into that diamond formation. So the two up front thing, you either go back to the 3-5-2 which Celtic started trying to play a way back last season. It was working, and then with injuries it just didn't work because you didn't have three defenders that you could call upon to play in that position. So you're back to sort of the 4-2-3-1 that we played under Rodgers, and that's where we've seen the best out of James Forrest. I think he's got something like 60 goals and 60 assists over the last 3 seasons, and taking that out of the team, as you say, you've missed him desperately. But when he came on against Dundee United at the weekend, you were excited to see him back, but you could tell how long he'd been out of the game. He wasn't getting up to speed, and I don't know if he would start against Rangers in 10 days time, but it's good to have that option in the squad, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, it was just everyone sort of rattles on about it with Griffiths as well. There's a difference between fitness and match fitness, and the only way he is going to get up to match speed is playing matches. But do I think a game against Rangers is the game to do that? Personally, I don't. Just the fact that it's still so early into getting this transition back to match fitness right. But like you say, it is just great to see him back. And like I say, he gets a fair bit of flack, but my God, we've missed him.
Now, when you look ahead to the games like this, there's always one sort of surprising element to the team selection. There always seems to be when you play against Rangers. You get that sort of one player that comes in and you go, well, they've come out of the blue. It's been either Lewis Morgan up front in the League Cup final. You take a look back to the game in October, Patrick Klimala. We've seen Mikey Johnson up front, Stephen Welsh coming in. Can you see the surprise? Can you predict the surprise of the selection that would probably come in? Could it be Ismaila Soro? Is it James Forrest? Is it Nir Beaton?
I'm not just letting Beaton because everything that happened in the last Glasgow derby, but he's just sort of not been anywhere in recent times. I think it's quite sad actually that we're saying that Soro's probably a little bit would be a surprise start, isn't it? But obviously it's the case of things right now that Brown has been on a little bit of a run. I don't know. It's like you say, it's impossible to predict. I'd have liked to have met anyone that could have predicted Klimala starting or Johnson up top or when Welsh was in defence. So it could be, God knows, it could be absolutely anybody. It could be Ewan Henderson starts or something like that. I don't even know. I don't think I'd like James Forrest in there. I'd love it. If it is, then I'd like to be proven wrong again. But I just think it's a little bit too soon, too big.
Hasboy1888 saying the surprise is the game will not be played. We're going to go on the basis that the game will be played. And for me, I think the potential one could be Barkas. I think you might see Barkas coming back in. For the reason being that I don't think Scott Bain's put a foot wrong, right? I definitely don't think he's put a foot wrong, but
nose was in the right place.
His nose basically says that I don't know what position he's in, if he's broke that nose or what it could be, but I really wouldn't be surprised to see Barkas coming back in. The goalkeeper always seems to be something that we've chopped and changed through this season. Neil Lennon said Scott Bain was his number one, but who's John Kennedy's?
Like you say, it's a lottery, it really is, and that's not just the goalkeeper, it's a lottery absolutely everywhere. But it could be right, it could be Barkas, could be Connor Hazard. It's frightening. Like you say, we're in March and we're not actually too sure who's this season's number one.
It just sums up how the season is going. David Kelly coming back and saying, great plan, bring Barkas in after 2 clean sheets for Bain. For us not to beat Rangers and Barkas to be the whipping boy again, that would be mental management. Do you know what? I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. But there's just something telling me that he's back involved in the squad. They've started mentioning him again. I expect to see him in the goal at some point between now and the end of the season, and it genuinely wouldn't surprise me if it was the game against Rangers. I think that Kennedy's going to give him a run of games between now and the end of the season.
I'm not even going to predict anything at this stage. I'm really not. I could, I'm just going to have like my head on a stick. It could be absolutely anything. It really could.
That's just the way this season has gone. And you know what? There's probably going to be even more happening in the world of Celtic between now and 12:30 tomorrow, when Paul John will be back alongside John Paul Mason and Declan McConville hosting the Celtic State of Mind Bulletin. Amy, you have a show coming up on Sunday on the Soccer Supernova. If anyone hasn't seen it yet, who do you have coming up this Sunday at 8 o'clock?
This Sunday I have Paul Cherry coming up, and honestly I do think it's one of my favourite ones. It was definitely one of the favourite ones that I'd filmed a few weeks ago now, but he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. You don't hear a lot of my voice, so it's a really, really great interview. That's the ones that have went well. But he's brilliant. He just tells so many good stories. He was at Hearts, then at St Johnstone as well. And I think the real interesting bit is his career after football. He's really open. He's out in sunny Spain. He does like to mention that a few times. And honestly, he was just like one of those really good football guys. And I thoroughly enjoyed that one. So yeah, tune into that for sure.
And
thanks for letting me plug.
You're welcome. That's Sunday 8 o'clock on A State of Mind. I'll be back on Friday morning for the Football Insomniac. It wasn't on today. We had a bit of a scheduling issue with the guest that was supposed to be in, but I'll be back on Friday when I'll be joined by a Celtic State of Mind's Laura Bradburn, and we'll take a look through the week's football, taking a look at the European adventures and a lot more to talk about. But we will be back on A Celtic State of Mind tomorrow, as I said. Paul John will be joined by John Paul. It's easier said when you kind of slow it down. And Declan McConville. But until then, everybody, stay safe.